Bear down, Chicago Bears. We are back. It is game day finally for the 2024 season. The Hall of Fame game is tonight at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And none of the starters for the Chicago Bears are going to be playing. Now, with that being the case, then the question is, what do the backups look like? So we got a couple of questions that we'll be asking over the next little while. Going into the game, however, let's talk numbers right now. The over-under on the game is set at 31.5. Houston is considered a 1.5-point favorite. Still not high on the Bears. They're still high on the Houston Texans to have a nice continuation of a season that saw C.J. Stroud kind of break out last year. So hopefully they'll continue on, but not at the expense of the Chicago Bears. Really, this comes down to, however, what does the secondary or the second unit look like for the Chicago Bears? So, as is tradition, the NFL will gear up this weekend's upcoming enshrinement ceremony for the Pro Football Hall of Fame with the Hall of Fame game, the Houston Texans and the Chicago Bears. The two teams are set to square off to their representatives. Houston's wide receiver Andre Johnson. None of these guys are going to be. By the way, none of these guys are going to be playing today. Andre Johnson, Devin Hester, Steve McMichael, all of them are going to be entering the Hall of Fame, along with Dwight Feeney, Julius Peppers, who was a Bear for 4 seasons, Patrick Willis, who, if you haven't watched that ESPN thing about Patrick Willis, I would suggest you watch that, and Randy Gradishar. So ultimately, they're going to be looking at, how Houston does. A lot of people were high last year on it towards the end of the year, think that they're going to continue what we see this year. But there's a couple of questions that we're going to ask over the next little while. These are the things that we, as Chicago Bears fans, should probably be looking out for today. Number one thing is, what does this Shane Waldron offense look like? Now, most likely, we're going to see Tyson Bagent and how he controls the offense coming into this game. And, the point of fact here is the questions that we're going to have to answer for Tyson Bagent, and there's only really one. Has his arm strength improved in an appreciable way? Tyson Bagent, very quick on the uptake, understands offense, seems to understand offenses rather quickly, understands concepts and design. So the question will be, has he improved on his ability to close space from his arm to the receiver? So we're going to find that out today. We're also going to get a look at Austin Reed, most probably, and Brett Ripien as the game progresses, because there will be a battle for I don't think there's a battle for the backup position. I think that's firmly Tyson Bagent, but there should be the emergency quarterback or the third quarterback option. We're going to be looking at Austin Reed versus Brett Ripien. So I think they'll get a lot of time. Tyson Bagent probably only the first quarter or maybe even the first drive before we really start to look at the rest of these guys. So the number one thing is, what does this Shane Waldron offense look like? Now, with that being the case, we have to recognize Shane Waldron's offense is going to be as vanilla as it gets. We're going to lead into this just seeing basic concept, basic schemes. We're going to see his most vanilla offense, but we should still get an idea from the players how they come out of their routes, what these things look like. We're going to see a lot about this team and what it looks like on the field under Shane Waldron coming into this, and how strong, how developed, how seasoned our second units are going to be. And that's going to be very, very important, because those are your guys that are rotating in and out all game long. Those are the ones that are keeping your starters fresh. And it's important that we have a deep roster. And we've had questions about that deep roster. So the Shane Waldron offense is going to be the first thing that we're looking for. Another thing that we're going to be looking for is Khalil Herbert or Roschon Johnson. The question remains, who is the backup running back at this point? Based on what you've seen without pads, that always favors the faster person, which in this case was Khalil Herbert. So the question now becomes, now that we've got pads on, now that we're playing on at game speed, what does Roschon Johnson and Khalil Herbert look like together? and who is going to end up as the backup running back. That backup running back, by the way, probably going to get 20-30% of the plays here. DeAndre Swift can't run. He can't be the only guy. So that is going to be a question that we're going to have to ask. Also, one of the questions is Khalil Herbert trade bait at this point, because he has made it known that he's looking for a contract and he knows that this is his season. So I think he wants to do the best possible job that he's. Do I have a hair on my nose or something? Like, God, how he looks for the other teams. And in fact, one of those other teams, the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys looking for a running back or a backup running back. And they are also in the market for a defensive end. In fact, rumors persist that Yannick Ngakoue may be on his way to Dallas and not to Chicago after all. So we'll be watching these guys to see how they play today. And is there a clear number 2 running back on this team? And by the way, we're going to give DeAndre Swift the job because you've paid him $8 million per year. Obviously, that's the guy that you're going with. But we're also going to see how firm his grip is on that position because, guys, if Roschon Johnson plays hard and plays well, then, things could change rapidly in this running back room. So that's another one that we're going to be watching for today. The other one, second year, the third thing we're looking for, second year improvements. Darnell Wright, we've not heard anything good coming out of practice from Darnell Wright so far. Basically, at this point, people are, he looks slow. Does he look slow, or is it just Montez Sweat looking real fast right now? Austin Booker as well. In fact, Austin Booker did say that Braxton Jones has been a nightmare, which is a good sign, by the way, to see Braxton Jones getting in somebody's head at this point. But we want to see how Darnell Wright is in this second year. Could this just be that Montez Sweat is on another level now that he's more comfortable in this system and this scheme? Tyler Scott, what is he going to look like on the field? Is he going to be in the starting lineup today? If not, you can't go with a 4-receiver set. So you got to think that Colin Johnson, Tyler Scott, Velus Jones Jr., they're going to want to see what they've got. So you're probably going to see some interesting stuff happening. And the question is, we know from training camp, Tyler Scott has been looking like a stud. And will this continue? It seems like he's already developed a connection with Caleb Williams. And if that is the case, distributing the ball to him during the regular season will be an interesting thing. Because coming off of the bench, that's the kind of the surprise move, right? When you bring that guy in, it's going to be interesting. And Broski Bear says it's not game day. It's a meaningless preseason game. Nothing is meaningless. If it doesn't count in your win-loss record, that's okay. But it does count. Every game means something. And also Tyreek Stevenson. Now, we've seen Tyreek Stevenson with an interception and several pass breakups in training camp. And the question is, how does he look when he gets on the field today? So we won't see Darnell Wright. We won't see Tyreek Stevenson, or if we do, we're not going to see very much. We might see 1 play, 2 play, something like that, or maybe, I don't know. But we're definitely going to see Tyler Scott. We're going to see how he's looking. We're definitely going to see Roschon Johnson. We'll see how he's looking. We'll get at least a better idea of, are these guys improving and will they crack the roster? Also, Austin Booker, what's he going to look like in his first year? Another question that we're going to be asking. And then who starts at center? So it would be my estimation that whoever starts at center today is not the current starter. So we might be seeing Coleman Shelton start the game if they've settled on Ryan Bates, which it seems like they have so far. We're also going to get a look at Doug Kramer, see what he looks like at the center position. And then it's also entirely possible that we see Coleman Shelton starting and we see maybe Ryan Bates getting in the mix as the backup. It would make sense to have him in the backup guard position. Both of these guys can't be there doing it. So should be some competition. We should see something, or at least it should give us kind of an understanding or a clearer sort of understanding of what's going to happen next. But now let's talk about the other thing that we're going to see in this first game. This will be the first test example of the new kickoff rules. What you see right now, this is the way the kickoffs were currently lined up. So it's fairly easy on this one. You have 10 guys on one side standing at the 30-yard line when you have a kicker. And then these guys are expected to run, about the 20-yard lines where we get the interception, right? So these guys are expected to run about 60 yards, get themselves up a full head of steam, or 40 yard, whatever it is, get themselves a full head of steam, break through the first line of defense at the 50, break through the second line of defense around the 25, and then get to the receivers. Well, this has been thrown out the window. This will not be happening. Instead, what we're going to be doing is something along the lines of this. The kicker will be kicking from the 35-yard line, and he will be kicking to two receivers stationed on or about the 5-yard line. But here's the difference. The offensive team, the kicking team, has been moved up 20 yards so that they get less of a catastrophic head start chasing down a guy. And instead of having layered blockers, it will be a 10-on-9 scenario in which one of these guys should be getting free, and that would leave potential evening out of blockers, as the other guy who's not catching the ball becomes an additional blocker to block that guy, and then the ball will be moved accordingly. Now, what does that look like? Well, let's move over to we're going to pop this up on a lay screen. So this is what it's going to look like. All right. Now, it's a little bit complicated when you're explaining it, Will the Bears try to hide some promising undrafted free agent players that might be pulled off of our practice squads? I don't think so at this point. I think the Bears are stocked enough that they're probably going to be looking at getting everybody a little bit of playing time just to see what they have. I think it's important right now for them to see what they have. And I don't know that there's anybody out there. Ian Wheeler, perhaps. He was an undrafted free agent coming in, and they really seemed to be pretty high on him. And he had a couple of fairly good practices. So, they might be looking at, want to see what he looks like. And you might also see a lot of these guys on special teams where you wouldn't normally see. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because if Ian Wheeler turns out to be a good runner and somebody who can play special teams well, then Travis Homer becomes a liability at that point, right? Because he's never going to get the ball running. At this point, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson are going to be those guys. So there's going to be some positional battles that we don't know right now that we'll see that will start to make a lot of sense. Will Dominique Robinson ever see the field? Maybe they want to see what he looks like, because we're in year 3 with Dominique Robinson and we haven't seen anything from him yet. So there are players out here that you might get to watch them kick the tires on, if you will. So NFL clubs have approved a new kickoff rule. So the ball is going to be kicked from the 35-yard line, as is the current rule. Safety kicks would be from the 20-yard line. The alignment, all kicking team players other than the kicker will line up with 1 foot on the receiving team's 40-yard line. Kicker cannot cross the 50-yard line until the ball touches the ground or a player in the landing zone or the end zone. The 10-team players cannot move until the ball hits the ground or the player in the landing zone or the end zone. So let's be clear about this. When we look at this right here, the players here, nobody can move until somebody catches the ball. This gives a clear and distinct advantage to the return team that we had not previously seen. So just consider that. These guys are going to have foot on the 40 until the ball lands or until it's caught or it's in that landing zone. So the receiving team lines up as follows. In the setup zone, a 5-yard area from the 35 to the 30, where at least 9 receiving players must line up. At least 7 players with a foot on the 35 with alignment requirements Players not in the restraining line must be lined up in setup zone outside the hash marks, and all players in the setup zone cannot move until the kick has hit the ground or a player in the landing zone or the end zone. So they may not even be looking backwards. I'm not sure how this is going to play out at its finest. We might be looking at these guys just looking across the field from 10 yards, and then it just becomes a scene out of 300. You know what I mean? And then a maximum of 2 returners may line up in the landing zone and can move at any time prior to or during the kick. So one of those guys will become a defender or a blocker. So then it'll be 10 on 10 with, again, the kicker cannot move past the 50-yard line until the ball hits the landing zone or is caught. Landing zone is the area between the receiver team's goal line and its 20-yard line. So once the ball hits the 20-yard line, that's when people can move. So any kick that it hits short of the landing zone is treated like a kickoff out of bounds, and the ball is spotted at the 40-yard line. Play would be blown dead as soon as the kick lands short of the landing zone, and any kick that hits in the landing zone must be returned. Any kick that hits in the landing zone and then goes into the end zone must be returned or downed. And then if it does, it'll be at the 20-yard line. If a kick hits in the end zone and stays inbound, is returned or downed. If down, then touchback is the 30-yard line. And any kick that goes out of the back of the end zone is a touchback to the 30-yard line. So if conditions cause balls to fall off the tee twice, then the kicker will be allowed to use kicking stick, but will not be able to use a person. There's not going to be somebody who holds it. It'll be a kicking stick. So the onside kick, when the fourth quarter begins, the team trailing has the opportunity to declare an onside kick to officials. Current onside kickoff rules would apply if onside kick goes beyond the setup zone untouched. The kicking team is penalized for UNS. Return team would start the drive at the 20-yard line. And then penalties, you've got your penalties and you've got your safety kick. So there you have it. There's going to be a difference. We're going to see something really different in this going into this season. If you want to go watch, you can go to the XFL and look that up on YouTube, and you can get an idea of what these kicks are going to look like. We might not see the coolest of the cool things yet. There might be some real interesting developments that happen that we're not privy to yet, that we haven't seen yet, that will develop because the NFL is the best of the best. We may be looking at this a little bit different later on this year or towards the end of the year. But for right now, this is what we're going to be getting. So watching out for Shane Waldron. We want to know what Shane Waldron's, what it looks like. We want to know Roshan or Khalil. We want to see what these second-year players look like. We're certainly interested in see what this kicking team looks like. We want to see how Tyson Bagent looks as well. So those are the things we're going to be looking out for going into this game. Let me know what you think, by the way, in the comments down below. Thank you for tuning in. And remember to bear down. Let's have a great game today, and fuck Green Bay.